Okay, I'm Mark Gagner. I am president of the Property Owners Association. I'd like to introduce Cheryl Moore, who is our secretary, John Tarantini, our treasurer, and as our guest speaker, Clayton is from the Wildcat Community and will be talking about FireWise. So, you want to start off, John?
Yeah, I have a video, 5-minute video to show you. Hopefully you won't get too offended by the language that's being used. This couple got out, but Gatlinburg is almost the same size as our community. The 14,000 acres that burned up
The
there.
whole time, you kept saying over and over,
When you sell me, how long ago?
help me.
2 years ago.
I think it's important to point out that it's very similar terrain to what we have here, and that the fire could move so quickly and spread so fast. All right, Clayton.
Okay. Well, good to be with everybody today. I'm Clayton Preble. I live on Monument Road, just down the road a piece. And we bought property in '97. Almost makes me an old timer. There are a few been around longer than I have up here. We built our house in just after 2001, 2002, and been up here full time since. And I got recruited and got involved in the Wildcat Community in early 2000. And soon after, got elected president, and nobody's been trying to take that job away from me for whatever reason.
It must be the high pay, right?
Yeah, it's a high pay. But the Wildcat Community consists of the Sassafras Mountain Estates, Monument Falls, Big Canoe. We recently got bent tree into it. Tomahawk down the road in Dawson County as part of it. Burnt Mountain Community, Tate Estates over by the lake there. Wintermont, Ed's holdout down there at the end. Windsong is part of this. I think I got everybody in there. But we got formulated because we recognized that we needed to take charge and do some things because there wasn't anybody else going to do it. The FireWise, we became a FireWise community in 2006. So for 15 years or so, we've been pushing a rope.
Could you mention, for a lot of people aren't familiar with what FireWise is?
Yeah, I'll get there.
Oh, okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I get there. And so we became a FireWise community in 2006. With the nucleus of people we had and our relationship with folks, we decided we needed a fire station. And so this station was built in 2009 with the partnership of Pickens County, Dawson County, and the folks up here. This building represents a $90,000+ investment. It sits on a piece of leased property owned by the folks that operate cell towers around here. They were glad to have a partner because before then they were having to cut the grass themselves and that sort of thing. And our being here improved the property, it provided a little bit of security, and thanks to John Tarantini, the grass stays cut. So we chipped in, the community up here chipped in $45,000, and the county spent $45,000 to build this building. Dawson initially provided us, Dawson County initially provided us a fire engine and a tender. The tender we still have, that's the tanker truck out there, the white tanker truck that says Dawson County on it. Dawson gave us an old fire engine. It wasn't accustomed to mountain roads, and it quickly failed in its ability to navigate. Come on in. And so again, I went back to the community and said, you know, we need another fire engine. Dawson wasn't prepared to do it. Again, the neighborhood stepped up. We raised over $40,000. They found that fire engine that's parked out there, and up in North Carolina, they'd gotten a grant at that community to buy a new fire engine, and so we bought their old fire engine, and it has really proved out to be a great investment for us. I got slightly ahead of myself because once we got the fire station built with all the equipment in it, we had nobody to do anything. And so a building with equipment without people is of little value. And so we asked for volunteers, and a bunch of folks stepped up and said, you know, we'll do it, because there wasn't anybody else. So we got a troop together. We went through extensive training, both medical as well as fire, and within the limits of our capability. We're not these young guys, 25 years old, full of, excuse the expression, piss and vinegar, who are willing to run out and do stupid things. We're a little more seasoned in terms of, most of us are anyway. Right, Ed?
No.
So we've got a station, and we got people, and we've been operating since then. So I want to talk to you about some things that I think are important for us to remember. Let me first talk about how we have how we've made a difference since we got in operation here. You know, we're down at Big Canoes North Gate is where Dawson County provides fire service. That's the closest fire engine to us in medical. In Pickens County, it's at Cove Road and Grandview. That station across from Bent Tree's entrance is our other closest fire station. So on a good day, under perfect conditions, nothing else going on, we all drive those roads, you know what it takes, but when you're bringing an engine up, you're 20, 30 minutes, unless you're really in a breakneck hurry to get up the mountain, particularly if you're hauling a big fire engine or they're just not equipped. It's uphill all the way, as you know. We benefit when we go down the hill because the gravity is our friend, but coming up the hill, it's a slow slog. So being up here and being able to respond to medical and our fire emergencies is a 15 to 20 minute better response time than what's available otherwise. So we have helped neighbors in times of medical emergencies, in terms of fire. We had a meeting here one night, on a Wednesday night. There'd been a thunderstorm. One of our folks left and was driving on Monument Road, and that log cabin on the left-hand side, he quickly turned around and came back. Their house was on fire. The garage had been struck by lightning, and they didn't know it. They were inside the house, wife and his daughter inside the house, and did not know their garage was on fire. And we were able to get back. We got emergency extra help on the way, and due to our fast action, we saved that house from burning down. It would have potentially been a total loss absent our ability to do that, because if we hadn't left at just the right time and observed what was going on, we never would have known. You have all benefited because of this station being here and other improvements that the fire departments have made. Our ISO rating, which is what determines what your insurance cost is, has gone down. And that's a big deal. We were a 9, what are we now, John? A 5?
Yeah.
And that 5 points out of that scale is a huge improvement. So you've all benefited from that. Equally important is because we're involved in this, we've got skin in the game, if you will, we have a voice with Pickens County. And we are able to get things done because of that voice. The road improvements that we've been able to make on Monument Road, the better markings, upgrades to it, the improvement that's been made between Monument Falls 2 and the park down there. When I bought up here in '97, the paved road ended a mile down this way. And so it used to be, we got lucky because the house that we bought was for sale by owner at the 3 miles down a dirt road in 1997. Not many people would go down there and look for a sale by owner. But due to that, and the other benefit is ice and snow. Because we're here and because we provide emergency services, we get better action out of Pickens County to get up here and help address the roads. Now, is it perfect? No. You know, we live in a different environment than the rest of Pickens County, those of us that live on the ridge. And so it's never going to be perfect, but it's an improvement. And the little green tank out here, just outside the front door, that's a brine tank. And so when they bring a brine tank up after they scrape the roads or before the snow's going to fall and they put the chemical down, they're able to refill up here now, rather than in the past they had to go all the way back down and get another load and then trudge it back up this way. One of our initiatives currently is we're talking to the county and advocating for the Big Canoe folks to put a hydrant at the top of the back gate. If you go down just before you start into the park, there's a little gate that goes down. There's Big Canoe's water sources there. We're advocating for a hydrant there. We have a hydrant here, but it's gravity flow. And you have to have great patience to wait for that to give you 1,800 gallons of water, which is what it takes to fill up the tender. And so having a source of water there will make a big difference. Okay, John, we're back to where we were on, yeah, thank you. So I do a lot of reading, and I try to bring things in to the discussion that I think are appropriate. So Donald Rumsfeld wrote a book after he retired from his position with the Bush administration, his Secretary of Defense, called Known and Unknowns. And I think that's appropriate to this discussion we're having today. And known knowns, which was the first category he had under known and unknowns, is those are facts. Those are things that we know. For example, in our current setting, we have a fire station. That's a known. We have equipment, and we have a group of volunteers. That's another known. He then said, well, what about known unknowns? And known unknowns are defined gaps. For example, we know there's going to be a medical emergency. Those of us in the fire station. We know there's going to be a fire. Those are all known. But the unknowns is we don't know when. We don't know what day, what time, whenever. But we know there will be. The third category he laid out was unknown unknowns. And these are gaps in knowledge and gaps that we don't know exist. I would liken that to things where people fail to imagine something. And I would suggest to you that the people of Gatlinburg, and that guy was riding in the car who was complaining about he didn't have any notice, which I would find hard to understand, is a good example of an unknown unknown, because nobody could imagine that that was going to happen. And there are some differences. The terrain is the same. One of the big things that they've got there are much more pine trees, or they had a lot more pine trees. We have more hardwoods. That favors us. But we have, in the fall of the year, we have leaves, a lot of leaves on the ground. And the bent tree fire that happened several years ago, it was the leaves that were carrying the fire as it advanced up the terrain. Another book, Safety Traps, is one I'm in the middle of right now, but a very interesting book by a guy named Stephen Corson. He wrote it on the basis of he's a security expert, but he speaks to how safety traps affect our lives, and primarily he was dealing with your own personal security and this sort of thing, either in your home or when you're out and about and that sort of thing. But he says safety traps are everywhere, but most of us have a tendency to believe that once a fear has been abated, that the risk is reduced as well. You might liken that to, well, there's a fire department on the mountain. I don't need to worry about a fire. That might be a classic example of that. He further goes on to say it's misguided because once your vigilance on something goes down, the risk goes up. So the more we get relaxed, the more we don't pay attention to things with respect to fire risk. Actually, our risk goes up. And he follows up with finally, when you feel that you're most safe is when you've let your guard down. And letting our guard down is whether you're dealing with a security issue or whether you're dealing with fire, is puts you at greater risk. And our greatest risk right now is wildfire, and the threat of wildfire is far more real than we might realize. And this is why FireWise principles that we're going to talk about are so important. And that's why the future of this station is so important. John asked my wife Chris and I to come together for a meeting with him this past week. And John reminded me that we are getting older. And I told him I didn't need to be reminded of that.
Every morning.
Because my dad always told me that old age was not for sissies, and you know. As a 70-something, I'm finding that principle, in fact, is really very true. But so I want to talk to you about what FireWise is, why it's important, and why we need you, and most importantly, what we all need to do our part to make sure that this community is going to be here. But before I dive into those, I want to add to what I think, and when I talk about some of these things, it's not just what we're faced with on the mountain, but it might be what is happening, things that could have affected us, like Big Canoe, for example, or Bent Tree, for example. There are a lot of new homeowners, and some people refer to new homeowners up here as city slickers that have transferred. I'm not going to do that, but some people do that. But they're unaware of wildfire risks because they've always lived in an environment where there's not a risk of wildfire for the most part. There are a lot of renters, and they're of the same category in some of these communities where there's little knowledge or appreciation of wildfire risk. Complacency and carelessness is another big factor. We've had a couple of fires up here that we responded to where people took ashes out of the fireplace, assuming that they were cool, and threw them out into the woods and went back inside. In one case, a lady over in Tate Mountain found that she came back out and saw the whole side of the mountain was going up. In another case, up here, the couple was enjoying a couple of glasses of wine in the house, and the woods were on fire right outside the door because they'd thrown hot ashes out. I showed up at the fire engine, and the dogs started raising hell, and they came out and said, "What's going on?" Well, the house, you know, the woods were on fire, and fortunately a neighbor had seen the woods on fire and brought it to our attention so we could do something about it. Landscaping practices are a big factor of FireWise. Pine straw is the worst possible thing that you can put down around your house. Let me repeat that. Pine straw is the worst possible thing. It is a torch waiting to happen. And if it's in your yard and up next to your house, of course we don't have enough pine trees up here to generate pine straw. So it's imported. So if it's up here, somebody brought it up, you know. But pine straw is extremely flammable and is a sure way of getting your house on fire and not saving your house. Deadfall in leaves. So deadfall is a limb that falls off a tree in your yard or somewhere near your house, that sort of thing. Leaves that will, in the fall, when they fall and they blow up next to your house, or under decks and those kinds of things, are things that help allow a fire to progress. You want to get those things away from your house. And we'll talk more about that. Other activity up here is increased building activity. There's a lot more homes going up. We're going to have a lot more neighbors. Sometimes contractors decide that they need to burn things in the yard. If it's cold, they want to stay warm. I understand that, but you know, we don't need that at a time when fire hazards are great. And finally, lack of common. Would you agree with me that there's a lack of common sense in the whole world today?
Yeah. And it's increasing.
It's increasing exponentially. So, you know, there's a process that we got on the website, the Wildcat website, that talks about how to get a burn permit. You know, you're supposed to have a burn permit. Well, when that permit is issued, it's based on where our station, which is down in Jasper there, what they perceive to be the fire risk to be. And it's based on a number of things: humidity, soil, lack of moisture in the soil, wind, and that sort of thing. But as you know, it can be calm and beautiful in Jasper, and we can have 30-mile-an-hour winds up here. Now I want to tell you, because we've all got at least 5 or 10 or more acres of land.
Some lots here are 3.5, but
Okay.
yeah, pretty close.
You still got a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need to burn on this mountain. I don't care. I mean, if you've got stuff, get a chipper, drag it off into the woods, get it away from your house. But there's no need to have a fire up here to burn up things. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And it's, even if you get a burn permit, we had a burn permit issued recently, and the person started burning, and you know, because they had the permit, well, deemed it all right. Well, the winds are up, and that just increases the ability of that fire to spread. So FireWise USA is a national accepted program co-sponsored with the U.S. Forest Service. We talked about delay, but up there on the mountain and within the counties around us, and with what the Georgia Forestry Service has to offer, there is insufficient fire services to stop a wildfire up here. I'll tell you that right now. It ain't going to happen. There are not enough people. If it gets away, It isn't gonna happen. There's not enough people. John and I listen to, and Ed and now Ernie's become part of our group. We listen to the radio all the time. We know how much activity is going on in Pickens and Dawson County every day. But in many days, they are delayed on getting folks to getting help to people they need to get because the demand is so high. Well, the same is true for the Forest Service. The Forest Service has got even limited resources. And so there's just not enough people to be able to help you. Your house will be protected if you take the FireWise principles and you implement them and you put them in place. If you don't, your house won't be there when you get back. And you don't want to be there if we have a wildfire. So insufficient fire service. The other factors that contribute to us are the terrain and slope. Starting below us, moves real fast. What the bent tree fire started from a power line getting hit by a limb and falling to the ground and arcing in the leaves. And it happened further down in bent tree and caught houses on fire and that sort of thing. It would have become a major problem. But the terrain, when the Georgia Forestry folks come, they come with bulldozer. Their goal is to create a path, a barrier between where the fire is and where it's going wide enough to be able to do it. But the mountain terrain we've got limits the ability of a bulldozer to be able to do its job. Most of the time it takes people with rakes and hose to go down and clear that kind of path. But a fire moving up moves too fast and people aren't going to risk their lives and we don't want them to. Under windy conditions, embers, that's when the houses or the woods are on fire. You saw the embers in the picture in the thing that John, those can carry for miles and start a fire well in advance. And that's what happened in Gatlinburg. The fire got going, the winds got real high. They picked those embers up and they moved them all over the place and caught the whole works on fire. I mentioned water. We've got 45,000 gallons in that tank when it's full outside that big green tank over there. We've got 1,800 gallons in the tender. We've got 500 gallons, John, in the engine. Is that right? That's all the water we got, unless they bring it to us right now. On the fire that we had in Monument Falls a number of years ago, which was from a lightning strike, we used, what, John, 40,000 gallons plus what people brought to us.
That was on Sunset Cliff.
Yeah. So if you want to save your home, if you want your home to be there in the face of a wildfire, you need to take very seriously the FireWise principles and learn to do what you can do. And you don't have to do it all in one day. There are a number of things that can go. John, let's move to the next one. Oh, I'm sorry, back up.
Bet you want to look at the website.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Let's bring up the website for me, please. John has just worked with a group and they have just overhauled our website and done a wonderful job with it. And this is a resource for everybody to use, for you to go to and look at and understand and then think about your own home and what you can do in your own home around your house to make it FireWise.
John, you gotta come out of the presentation and change the screen.
Yeah, it won't come up in.
You gotta change, if you come off the Alt tab on the computer and come out of the PowerPoint, it should show that screen. No.
It won't show on there.
Okay, that's all right. All right, go to the next slide. Anyway, that's the website. If we communicated this to everybody.
Yeah, in fact, we have
Yeah,
that
and
later.
we'll get to that too when we get to how we can help you out.
Okay. All right, let's move to the next slide, John. That'd be fine. Has it stopped? Uh-oh, Ed's going to the computer. Very good, thank you. So this is a key slide that's on our website that we pulled from the FireWise USA. And what they're talking about here is creating a defensible zone around your house. And how big that defensible zone is a function of what the grades are coming up to your house. Are you right on the edge of a steep decline down there, or is it pretty flat? Generally speaking, the most important area first is this 30, you can see that 5 feet. That's where you don't want any combustible materials on the ground. The 30 feet is where you're going to remove deadfall, big leaves, and that sort of thing to keep that area free. And then you're going to keep wood piles and things like that away from the house, and ultimately create, slowly but surely, a large area around your house.
Copy it off of here onto your computer and
Ernie,
then plug your other thing back in.
Dennis
This is done.
did a good job, I think, of creating that defensible zone around your place, didn't he?
I've got a lot of trees that are pretty close,
Yeah,
so I have a question about that.
Yeah,
okay.
if you could unplug something, copy the file.
So,
Okay, but as long as we
keep your
can
roof
do it,
clean,
fairly quickly.
leaves out of the
We'll wait
gutters.
till Clayton's done.
Gutters are, my wife won't let me get on a ladder anymore. Have you seen that television commercial where they're talking about leaf guard?
No, we've
And that
got
guy,
them.
and that guy says, you know, they ask who's climbed a ladder, and that guy raised his hand, and his wife said, "Kevin, I told you not to climb a ladder." It's the most irritating thing I've seen. It does make you, but I'm not putting a leaf guard. Gutters with leaves are a flashpoint for putting fire into your house. Gutters need to be cleaned. So there's any number of things that you can do yourself that can give you a defensible zone around your house and impede the ability of a wildfire with embers flying ahead of it, setting the woods on fire around your house. So it's fun. What I do is I try to keep the area as clean as I can, and then I monitor the deadfall, limbs that come off trees, and I go out there and I drag them further out. I don't burn anything, I just drag them further from the house. The nice thing about that, you can create some nice piles away from the house where the wildlife can have a place to hide and do their thing. So you can do that. This sign, which we have at the front end, the Georgia Forestry Service gave us that sign. It's an easy thing to ride by it every day and, well, whatever. And you might say, well, I wonder how they determine what the setting needs to be. Well, we have pegged the ranger station in Lumpkin County as the area that has the terrain and characteristics most similar to us. It's probably 10 or 15 miles the way the crow flies. So it's just over on the other side of 52. So we monitor that, and one of our members of the fire department keeps up with it, and when that changes, anytime it changes, he goes to the board and he monitors that. And so when you see that fire rating there, it's based on real criteria of what we need to pay attention to. Of course, if you don't burn anything outside, which is what we don't want you to do, it's not as big a deal, but it is an important sign. And as I said, they base it on heat, how hot it is, what the humidity is, what the soil humidity is, and what the wind's doing. That's how they determine what that rating needs to be. Okay, John? So, the material for self-education is extensive on the website. And it is there for you to do. We've tried to do over all the years, we've tried to do audits, we've tried to have champions, we've tried to do this and try to do. It really comes down to everybody taking personal responsibility to take care of your own place. I can't do it for you, John can't do it for you. I mean, you got to take all my, you got to recognize that this is a real deal, and you got to do something. You got to want to do something about it. If you want to save your house and you want to save your property, and you want to save your neighbor's property. That brings us to Station 10. You know, this is a great building. I've already laid out. You know, we've got 90,000 in the building itself. We've got probably another 100,000 of equipment here, and we're all volunteers. And as John reminded me, we're getting older. We got to have some younger blood. What's our average age of volunteers? 70. John and I are helping that average.
We bring the count up.
and others are. But in short, without volunteers, this won't be anything. It'll just be a building sitting here. It won't have any value whatsoever. If there are not people here who are willing to go through the training and learn what needs to be done, step up, it won't serve any purpose. So we've got to have volunteers to come. So what's in it for you? Well, you're going to learn a working knowledge of life-saving medical procedures. That in itself. My wife's a registered nurse by education. Her specialty was childbirth education, but she still understood all this stuff, the medical stuff, because she had to, you know. But I learned, I was a Boy Scout, and that's where I got my activity. But since I got in this program, I've learned all kinds of things. When we listen to the radio and we hear emergency call of somebody, we diagnose what the potential issue is, which is what all of us do as volunteers. If we're responding to a medical situation, when we hear that call and they say these are the characteristics of what the patient is faced with right now, we're already doing a mental inventory about what to expect when we get there. Is it a stroke? Is it a heart attack? Is it a possible diabetes issue? You know, there are all signs there that you understand them, and that could make a difference, not only just for you being able to help somebody, it might make a difference to you being able to save your spouse. We've learned firefighting principles and how fires spread. We know the characteristics of those. We know the do's and the don'ts. We know how to get to it. If we get a call because of a fire alarm going off, we know how to go scope it out. We're on the radio to tell the incoming troops because we're getting backed up, but they're on the way, but they're still 15 or 20 minutes away, about what to expect. If we've got a major fire, then we can give them that advance notice so that more troops come. We learn how to work as a team to put out a fire. And here's the cool part here. Those that are willing to become qualified and certified to drive, you can drive a fire engine. You can drive. We have the tender and we have the engine. The tender, John always runs here first and grabs the engine because it's the easy one to drive. Yeah. He leaves the tender for me.
It's only 500 gallons of water.
And it's got 1,800 gallons of water behind my back. You know, if I wrecked that damn thing, I'd drown. But each of those have different driving characteristics that you've got to be familiar with. But because of the weight and the way it handles and that sort of thing. One of the great rewards that I've experienced is this. You would not believe what you can sense from people, the expression of relief when you walk into their house and one of their loved ones is going to have an emergency situation, and somebody is there who they believe and trust can help because they don't know what to do and they're panicking. And so that's an unmeasurable personal award of getting involved to do what we do and help fill in the ranks behind us, is what that means to people when you show up, again, 15, 20 minutes, depending on what's going on in the county. It could be 30 minutes, it could potentially be an hour. You don't know how long it's going to take for an ambulance to come. At the same time, when we assess that medical situation, we're on the radio, we're letting the incoming know the seriousness of the event so that they can come prepared to be able to do what they do best.
We average a 7-minute response time from this station. Both counties best bet between 30 and 40 minutes if they're in their station. If they're not, anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half.
So we're trained to do up to a certain level, and we don't exceed that level. We know what we're capable of doing, and we know what we're not supposed to do. We don't transport. There are certain things that we're certified to do, and as long as we work within that scope of what we're training and certified to do, then we're covered personally for any liability relative to that. If you exceed that, let's say Charlie back here was having a heart attack, and if I decided to do open heart surgery on Charlie, that would be deemed going outside of my skill level, wouldn't it, Charlie?
I trust you.
So we've got to have some help. And anybody can do this if you want to do it. Years ago, I was involved in starting a Cub Scout troop. How many people have done that? How many people have started a Cub Scout troop?
Girl Scout troop.
That's the same difference. Anyway, we started one. So the leadership comes in, and all their uniforms, the district people, you know, that are paid people by the Boy Scouts. They come in, and all of us dads are sitting around the room there, and they start explaining the program and what you have to do and everything, and they say, okay, so here's what you got to have. You got to have a leader. You got to have a scoutmaster. You need this many assistant scoutmasters, and so forth and so on. Now we're going to leave the room, and we'll be back in 30 minutes, and when we come back, y'all tell us who's going to fill those roles. Everybody starts looking around at each other, you know. Oh hell, what are we going to do now? But people stepped up, and that's what we need to do now. It's always easy to say we're busy. It's always easy to say we don't have time. It's always easy to say somebody else is going to do it. But, you know, if John and myself and Ed and Ernie weren't doing what we would be doing, who would be doing it? Again, it's very rewarding. It's not easy. But we're filling a role that needs to be filled, and we need some younger, stronger blood to step up. We're not going to throw you to the wolves. We're going to work together. And John and I are going to continue to do as much as we can, as long as we can. We're not going anywhere anytime soon unless the good Lord decides He's got other plans for us. But we seriously got to have some young blood. And John, let's see, we have how many? 14?
14 volunteers, yeah.
14 volunteers. Of that, we have 4 women, or 5?
5.
5 women. And they all fill, you know, different roles. Everybody doesn't have to drag a hose. That's relief right there. You don't have to drag a hose, but you can learn the medical skill. You can help in that. Because with being volunteers, we're all not sitting around waiting on the phone to ring. I run a business and I'm on the road all the time, running here and there and doing things like that. So, you know, typically there might be half of us available, or a third in some cases, or sometimes only one. So there's a need for us to have good, able people who are skilled and prepared and want to help themselves and help the neighbors fulfill these roles. So that's my formal comments. Mark?
Quick question for Clayton. Clayton, ideally, how many volunteers would we have in this station?
In this station?
Yes.
Well, part of what drives that particular equation, the county has carries workman's comp on all of us, as they need to. And so there's a cost associated with that. I think the correct answer would be to that question, Ed, is I would like to see 20.
So that's a target.
That's a target. We'd get some pushback on workman's comp, I'm sure. But, you know, those of us that are connected with people in the county, we know how to push those hot buttons, and we just say, you know, listen, guys, we got to have, you know, with the amount of activity, the building we've got going on, we've got to do it. And at the same time, there's some folks that probably may be wanting to think about stepping down, that are a little more senior than John and I are in terms of age-wise. So we could make room for some folks if they knew that there were good folks going to step in behind them and fill a role.
The point you made about people being out of town is very valid.
Yeah.
At any given moment.
Yeah.
Even with 14, you may only have 1 or 2 people here. If you have 20, hopefully you've always got 3 or 4.
Right.
So,
Right. Claire can attest to the fact that you're gone a lot. Can't you, Claire?
her choice.
Not enough.
Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna say this is like a master class on persuasiveness, right? I'm in.
That
I'm
was
gonna
the
help however I
objective,
can.
yes. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, I think clearly you guys have just done an incredible job, and I feel very grateful for all the work that's come before us, right? So I want to help in recruiting, because I do think getting this information out is really,
Right.
really valuable and important. I have one just random question. Is there any value in collecting rainwater, establishing any sort of like cistern or something in order to meet some of those water resource needs?
Well, there can be a, for us to, so we can draft water if we can get the tender close enough to it, or the engine close enough to it. We can draft.
Shared swimming pool.
Yeah. So the question is, if we were going to use a swimming pool resource,
Or like build a cistern for that purpose, right, for rainwater collection.
so I mean, you'd have to have so much.
A cistern would be pretty small. It might only be 1,000 gallons, and
Right.
the truck carries 1,800 as it is.
Yeah.
So, but we do have a couple of people who are set up so you can draft out of their swimming pools. Right?
Yeah, you got to get, when you're drafting, you have all of our hoses that we fight fire with, we're putting pressure behind them and water scooting it out, you know.
Right.
When you're drafting, you have a fixed hose that goes into the source with a strainer on the end of it, and so that it can't collapse. And then because what you're doing is you're pulling that suction through there like that. So you got to be able to get close. Now, you asked about collection rainwater. I'll tell you what I do at my house. I have a 1,000-gallon tank in the basement, our unfinished basement. And I have hooked up our toilets to that rainwater system. So I flush toilets with rainwater. I collect water off of the back side of the house into that tank. Because, you know, a flush is, depending on the quality of your toilet, somewhere between 3.5 and 7 gallons per flush. And so, you know, since it's gotten so dry, we've been using rainwater.
And this fire station does the same thing.
Yeah, we collect rainwater here. We don't have a well for the fire station. We collect rainwater, and we have a reverse osmosis system that, so we have two types. We have gray water, and we have reverse osmosis water that's
It's a
suitable
3,000
for
gallon
drinking.
tank.
Yeah, it's a 3,000 gallon tank out back. So there's personal things that you can do to preserve your own well water, which is a precious resource. But, is it Tricia?
Yes.
Okay, we want to see you at the end and talk more, okay? Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Both Bentry and Big Canoe at the entrances have the signs that you showed
Uh-huh.
with the fire
Yeah.
danger. I've always wondered, because it seems like they never changed, are they monitored daily and adjusted according to, I think you said it was Lumpkin County or something?
Well, there are various weather stations that are available to draw that data from. And our guy that keeps up with our sign down there, who actually lives in the Burnt Mountain community across the road, he's actually the closest to it, did some research, and he determined all of the stations that were there. So I'm not sure what each station, what they're relying on.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you for sure that they are changing it, but one of our responsibilities, and Georgia Forest was given us that sign, was you shall keep it current.
Okay.
So it's supposed to be. Is it? We don't know. I don't know. Good question, though.
Okay, I have one more thing to bring up. We have FireWise brochures to hand out at the end of the meeting. But also, could you briefly mention the fire safety assessments that FireWise will do for people's homes?
Yeah, originally, we tried to find somebody in each community who would become a trainer, if you will, and would go around and help people do the assessment. We've never been able to get the traction that we would like to have from that program. Very few people wanted somebody else snooping around their house, pointing out things to my wife that she's going to make me do, you know. So we've really gotten away from that. I mean, my whole focus right now is individual responsibility. I mean, that's a foreign concept in Washington, D.C., as we know, but it's not a foreign concept for good Georgia people. And so my pitch to you is, and to the communities of both, and I'll be doing the same thing next Saturday for Sassafras on that side of the mountain for their annual meeting, is, guys, we got to take the bull by the horns, and everybody needs to recognize that not only are you going to protect your own house, you're going to protect your neighbor's house. Because if you've done your job, then your house won't be a contributor to the house fire that might accumulate on their property. And you know, there've been a lot of reports and visual presentations of where wildfires have gone through. Everybody's burned out except one or two houses. Yeah, those one or two houses did it right. Their house survived, where the other houses all got burned to the ground. But it, you know, the information is self-explanatory. It's good. It just takes. I've achieved my goal because Tricia told me I had, which was I was a motivational speaker for us to get off our butts and do something about this, you know, and that's what we got to do. We just got to do it. Got to take the bull by the horns. So, Elaine, you had a question, I think.
Well, I was sort of like a question statement. Is like when John mentioned before that before we had a fire station, our insurance rating was 9, And because we had the fire station, it went down to a 5. But if we don't have a fire station, that will revert back to a 9, won't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't recall what difference it made. John, do you recall what difference it made in our fire insurance?
In my house, it was $1,000 a year between a 5 and 9.
There you go. So John and Elaine helped invest in this station. He helped invest in a new engine, and he's gotten he get a far better return on that investment than he would if he had his money sitting in the bank today, right? Earning 0% interest. So anyway, anything else? Well, thank you for listening. I wish more of your fellow neighbors were here. And Tricia, we're going to look to you to help us stimulate those people that did not show up, okay? John, if anybody wants to be involved in the fire station, what do they need to do?
Just email me or give me a call and I'll arrange for the training. It is not as, I always get the question that I work, how can I possibly contribute? And the real issue is if you're available, then you're able to respond. You don't have to be there for every call. You just, if you're available when you're at home, you hear the radio, then you respond. But you got to be trained to do that. You cannot, the notion that you can show up for fire, fight the fire is not a good assumption. First of all, you're going to get yourself hurt, and secondly, probably won't do anything for that home or the people that live there.
With that in mind, let me mention one thing in closing, and that was, we've all survived COVID, whatever it was. I read this article this week that talked about life insurance companies have not made any changes in the way they issue or charge for new life insurance policies because of COVID. And the notion was that they analyzed it and they didn't determine it was any worse than any other type of influenza that we've faced before. Interesting thought. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but a very interesting thought about what that means. But during the COVID experience, before we got vaccinated, and the county vaccinated, offered us, they didn't make us do it, but we did not respond. If there were COVID symptoms, we didn't go. The county didn't expect us to go. We left it to the paid guys to go to those things. So one of the things you learn is your personal safety is paramount. What you're trying to do, you want to take care of yourself first before you take care of the person in trouble.
Clayton, could you talk about your yearly application grant?
Okay, so
Just briefly.
So two things there. Every year we have to recertify ourselves as a FireWise community. And there's an array of criteria there. COVID slowed us up in a lot of meetings like this because we all need to be safe amongst each other, so we couldn't do some of those things we wanted to do. But one of the criteria is doing whatever the community at large does or what you do individually in terms of your personal cleanup capability. For example, I got 2 lots next door to me that we own we have 15 acres at Front Monument Road. And so I hired Manuel Garcia and his gang of merry Hispanics to come in, and they did a beautiful job of cutting out all the small brush and trees and get them out of the way and carry the deadfall back. Some of it we ground up, pulverized. Others we carried further back into the woods. So we try to keep up with that because investment dollars that we make as individuals as well as we make as communities of being able to clean up give us credit towards meeting the FireWise criteria, and meeting the FireWise criteria is an important component of our ISO consideration.
And Cheryl is gonna talk momentarily about
It was the
what
segue.
we have on our website to,
It's the segue.
yeah,
Yep.
to facilitate that so people can easily report
Good,
time or money that they
Yeah.
have spent.
yeah, great, great. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely. It was the segue into,
Okay,
Yeah, it was a good intro.
it was. Okay, thank you very much.
thank you, Clayton.
All right, Cheryl.
Thanks for being here, and welcome front. And this is how you can help. If you can't be a firefighter or help out with the fire department, cleaning up your yard or hiring someone to do it, that's something you can do, and this is how you can help the Wildcat community. Next slide. You keep track of, it says man hours, but I would say hours and costs and expenses associated with any debris cleanup. So if you go out and rake leaves for an hour, keep track of that time.
Well, let me talk a little bit about risk investment. She's been talking, the way FireWise works is the federal volunteer rate is $27 an hour. We are required to have the number of dwellings we have in all the Wildcat community times $27 to meet the minimum risk investment to maintain the FireWise status.
Well, and to put it another way, 1 hour of work cleaning up your yard
Per dwelling.
per dwelling qualifies us to remain FireWise certified.
Like a year ago, we had $1.5 million combined with all our Wildcat communities. That's because we had a big storm and we had significant damage during that storm. We had to clean the culverts up, the deadfall, storm damage where the trees, a lot of the tree branches fell off, ice storm. That typically don't happen every year, so how we assemble this information is really critical to maintaining the FireWise status.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay. All right, well, hopefully now we've convinced you that fire is a real, honest-to-goodness danger here on the mountain, that fires can spread quickly,